Hello and good morning, and thank you for joining me today for our second MythBuster. This is a special topic for me, you will see. I really think that this is one of the other topics that is greatly misunderstood by the traditional medical system. As a matter of fact, if you go ahead and you search leaky gut and you get Wikipedia, which usually Wikipedia tends to be pretty open-minded and tends to be a good source of information for a lot of things. The first thing that it will tell you, which I thought was fascinating, is that leaky gut does not exist. And that, as a matter of fact, it's a ploy, that alternative physicians and healthcare providers are using to sell patients supplements, which I thought was a bit strong. But on the other hand, they will tell you that they believe in intestinal permeability syndromes and issues, which, by the way, is the exact same thing, but whatever they want to call it, we're okay with that. We know what we're going through. We know how we can make a difference in it. But don't be surprised if you ever address one of your physicians and you tell him that you think you have leaky gut, that he looks at you like you have horns and a tail. So let's talk a little bit more about it. What is the myth that we're trying to break up? The myth is that people telling you that there is no connection whatsoever between the intestinal system, the urinary system, and the nervous system. So the truth is that is wrong. There is definitely a connection, and we're going to explore which one. We're going to start with serotonin. As you know, serotonin is a neurotransmitter. Neurotransmitters are just chemical little messengers that communicate. One nerve communicates to the other, cell fibers, and this is how information gets kind of taken down the pathway. The neurotransmitters can work in activating other nerve cells, they can activate muscles, they can activate glands, and more importantly, they can also activate hormones. So they're super important in everything, and they have to do with function of everything. What people don't realize, and another name that serotonin has, is the well-being and happiness neurotransmitter. And what they don't understand is that 90 to 95% of serotonin is being made in the intestinal tract. So you can imagine that if you have intestinal issues, if you've gone through chemotherapy and your poor intestines have been trashed, or if you've been on antibiotics for many years because they keep telling you have these chronic urinary tract infections, which you may or may not have, and they've once again trashed your intestines, or if you're gluten sensitive, etc., that all of a sudden your serotonin levels are going to drop significantly. And since serotonin is so important for mood disorders and sleep, no wonder that people whose serotonin levels go down, not only do they get deeply depressed, but they cannot sleep and they don't heal. And then their appetite is all out of whack. And more important, they start getting that fog, that brain fog that is very common with leaky gut. And learning, they just feel sometimes, that's when you feel like, oh my God, I can't learn anything new. That's when you go to the kitchen and you go, oh, I know I came to do something, I just don't remember what. So all of that is serotonin mediated. And we're now going to explain to you how the presence of leaky gut could then lower serotonin levels and throw you into a path of lack of that sense of lack of well-being. So what's leaky gut? This is a picture, as a matter of fact, of a normal system. We know that if you look at this area over here, this is the intestinal tract. Okay, and in the basal membrane area, this is the blood system. So the way that we digest food is super important. If you do not chew your food, which, by the way, digestion starts in the intestine, in the mouth, by the way, with mastication, meaning chewing. There's a lot of enzymes in saliva that it already start breaking down food. And then if you don't have the proper acid levels in the stomach, you're not going to break down food further. And on top of that, if you don't make the proper pancreatic enzymes that are digestive enzymes, and also the bile that comes out of the gallbladder, all of those things are meant to break down food to a level that it can then be transferred from the apical membrane and all the way down to the basal membrane. So for example, fats are going to be broken down to small, tiny fatty acids, and those can be transported into the cell and then out into the blood system. In the case of proteins, you're going to have amino acids. In the case of carbohydrates, you're going to have glucose. All of those get taken from the GI tract over here. They get translocated through receptors in some cases. Other ways of doing this is through channels. Other ways of bringing things in is through exocytosis, which is a way of, like, you can think of it as a Pac-Man that comes out, a cell membrane comes out and engulfs certain things and brings them in. But for that, the apical membrane has to be healthy, and more importantly, everything has to be broken down into the basic units so the body can recognize them as useful things and they can take them across. Okay, so that would be transcellular route. Okay, across the cell. There is also a paracellular route which goes between the cells. Okay, this is controlled by the tight junctions. Think of the tight junctions as little bolsters that hold together, that bring together the cells tight enough that only the very small specialized molecules can go through and nothing else. Okay, and that's going to be paracellular route. Now, one other thing that is super important is, like we were talking about, the importance of breaking things down to small levels. Minerals are going to be taken out that way through the membranes, and a lot of other very valuable things. So what is leaky gut? Leaky gut essentially is a condition where you will have inflammation, you will have many causes that are going to break down that tight junction. So it's like snipping the tight junction with a little scissor or whatever, and then those little bolsters come apart, and then all of a sudden the space between cells is big enough that even undigested food are going to get through. Okay, so what happens then when you have a lot of undigested food of different sizes and composed of different things, and it gets through into the blood system, the body says, the immune system says, what is this? I don't recognize this. It truly feels like it's an invasion. Okay, and like it would have it's being invaded. So what is the poor immune system going to do? It's going to try to help you, of course, always, and it's going to start working over time in trying to recognize these particles and trying to attack these particles and trying to build antibodies against it, cellular response to it, and before you know it, what you have is an amazing inflammation, an amazing upregulation of the immune system, and then after a while, the pure system, not only is it overwhelmed, but it also cannot recognize self from non-self. And anytime you have an immune system that cannot recognize what belongs to you and what's belonging to the outside, then it starts becoming autoimmune, meaning it's going to attack indiscriminately all kinds of things. Now, also remember, some of these little particles may get trapped between the cells, and then the immune system, eager to help you, is going to try to get to them, and is going to destroy more cells, more gut cells, and so it's a vicious cycle. You keep breaking down more intestinal cells, and then there's more permeability, the immune system gets more upregulated, and it becomes a crazy situation, and is the perfect storm. Now, remember another thing. A lot of women and men, and a lot of people that suffer from interstitial cystitis and pelvic pain bladder syndromes, also chronic pelvic pain syndromes, are going to have a significant number, I would have to say in the 90%, are going to have leaky gut. Okay, why? Because the amount of stress that people are under from having constant pain is going to break down the intestinal layer. Now, once the intestinal layer starts breaking down, that is the signal for everything to go into the perfect storm. Now, if the immune system is way busy trying to analyze and fight these little undigested food particles, is not going to be able to help you break down a lot of the organisms, microbes and fungi and viruses and limes and all these other opportunistic infections that are very common with IC, because it's too busy trying to deal with everything else. So you have not only autoimmune disorder, but you have a compromised immune system which is not able, doesn't have enough strength, it doesn't have enough oomph to go after these microorganisms. And if you have that, then you're going to be kind of once again behind the eighth ball. So also we know that people that have had chronic inflammation of the bowel can down the road end up with certain cancer, intestinal cancers and others. So super important to reverse this. Unless you reverse leaky gut, you're never going to be able to get rid of the opportunistic infections. So a lot of the people that are out there trying to kill these infections with this, that, and the other without healing the leaky gut, all you're doing is chasing your tail, and you're not going to succeed. So number one priority is going to be to heal the gut. Okay, so a perfect example of this scenario is people that have gluten sensitivity. If you are from Northern European descent, you're going to have a higher likelihood of being celiac, and you don't have to be a celiac to be gluten sensitive and to be affected by gluten. And this is going to cause more increased intestinal permeability. Then this, as you know, is going to go through the cascade we have just discussed. So we need to get away from any foods that are going to trigger this inflammatory process of this intestinal epithelium, because as you know now, if you don't, that's going to overwhelm your immune system, and you're going to end up having autoimmune as well as a lack of immunity against opportunistic infections, and you're not going to be able to handle toxins. Toxins are going to be going right through from your intestinal system to the blood, taxing the poor liver, which is already taxed in general. All of a sudden it has massive amounts of toxins that should have never gotten in unless there were problems with the tight junctions being opened up, and all of a sudden the liver is working overtime. Also remember that a lot of people that have IC will have issues with methylation and liver detoxification pathways, so they already have a bit of a compromise there, and on top of that a heavy load of toxins, and that once again creates another vicious cycle, which no wonder people have brain fog and depression and a lot of the other symptoms that we will discuss in a second. So if this sounds familiar to you, these are symptoms that definitely point out to leaky gut. Chronic diarrhea, constipation, alternating from one to the other, gas or bloating, any significant GI stressors, irritable bowel syndrome, people that have Crohn's disease, people who've had radiation or chemotherapy or a lot of antibiotics are going to be in this first category. So it's going to be super important to address that. Poor immune system, of course, we talked already about that. People that are having leaky gut are going to have, very typical for them to feel like they're always in a brain fog. And that's multifactorial. It's not just that your serotonin levels are low, but also all those toxins that are coming through and overwhelming your liver, okay? So it's not just about anxiety, depression, ADD, etc., memory loss. It's about fatigue. So the fatigue, once again, it's dual. It's that increased toxicity, the immune system working very hard, attacking your own body, your poor body feeling like doesn't know what to do with these attacks, and there's a mayhem. Skin rashes, acne, eczema, cravings for sugar and carbs, very typical of people with leaky gut. Why? Because even though you're eating food, because you cannot break it down into the particles that are actually recognized by your system and that can be utilized to feed everything else, you're actually starving in a way. You can be eating a lot, but you're actually starving in a way. So that is that constant craving. A lot of arthritic pain and joint pain, inflammation throughout the joints of the body. And of course, this is associated with other autoimmune diseases such as rheumatoid arthritis, celiac, Crohn's, lupus. You know that once the immune goes crazy and starts attacking self, it's not going to be able to, it's not like it just stays in one system. You go, oh, it's only affecting my thyroid. I only have autoimmune thyroid. It's not true. If you have an autoimmune thyroid, I promise you that you're also going to have autoimmune everywhere else in your body. No doubt that sometimes it manifests more strongly in one area of your body than the other. But that just tells you that the immune system is just attacking everywhere. It's just more obvious in some areas of your body. So, what are the causes? I say that a lot of them are self inflicted. For example, diet. We know that gluten, dairy, and now we are more familiar with lectins. A really good book I would like you to consider reading is one called Plant Paradox. It tells you a lot about immunity and the things we eat. I tell you, after I've been reading more about lectins, I've gone back to using my pressure cooker, not only because it's fast and it's really helpful, but also it is the best way to break down a lot of the lectins that can be very immunogenic to you. So another book that I would recommend that I love is Cooking Under Pressure. It's been fantastic, best delicious recipes there that are 7 or 8 minutes in a pressure cooker. But remember, of course, you always have to adapt your these recipes for people that have IC. So not everything is going to be applicable, but we're all smart enough to know how to do that after years of dealing with it. Sleep disorders are very common. When you're not sleeping, you're not healing. When your cortisol levels are going up because you're not sleeping, that that cortisol is a huge way of affecting the intestinal tract and therefore causing leaky gut. Mineral and vitamin deficiencies. There are some vitamins, including C, that are super important for the regeneration of the gut, zinc and iron, etc. Remember, those C should be used with extreme caution in the majority of patients with IC, so be careful with that. Even buffer vitamin C sometimes can be risky. And of course, infections, not only infections that are already in your intestinal tract, but after years of antibiotics, like a lot of you have gone through, you're going to have an improper balance between the helpful bacteria and the ones that are not so helpful. And so trying to rebuild the proper ecological system in your intestinal tract is difficult, but not impossible. It's just a matter of being consistent. Alcohol, caffeine, and refined sugars are sure ways of getting into leaky gut. And of course, aging, I was joking about this, is definitely not self-inflicted, but none of us can avoid it. But no doubt that the aging process can also affect the intestines and cause leaky gut in some people. Other causes that are being done to you by the healthcare professionals and the medical system is going to be certain medications like non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, things like aspirin and Aleve and other things like that. They should be minimized. They're huge. They can cause a lot of damage. So please don't be on these things chronically. Chemotherapy, of course, if you had breast cancer or other types of cancer and you've had to go through either radiation or chemotherapy, there is no faster way of annihilating your poor intestinal tract than with chemotherapy. That's also going to annihilate the production of serotonin, like we talked about, and it's going to affect you at every level. So very important to reverse after the chemotherapy the leaky gut, because they're one and one. There's impossible to go through cancer treatment and not end up with significant and severe leaky gut. And the one that I really want to emphasize to you is the scars. People don't understand that scars not only affect the myofascial system. Now we know that the myofascial system is one organ. So whether you have a scar in your hand, it doesn't matter. That can affect the scar, your fascia in the pelvis and the pelvic floor in your back. So if you have any scar tissue from a previous surgery, a lot of that scar tissue is going to affect both the myofascial system and also the acupuncture system. One thing that I would invite you to do is to bring out the picture of a person and then kind of draw every scar that you have in your body, whether it was by an accident or by surgical, and then superimpose to that the system, the acupuncture system, and you will see that you're blocking some significant, and that's just for fun. But if you have scar tissue, primarily from a major surgery, please, please, please find somebody who can do either neurotherapy, treating the scars with B12 and folic acid, or with acupuncture. There's other ways of doing that, but do not think for a second that they're not affecting you significantly. As a matter of fact, I've had a significant number of patients that have come to me for care, and by just treating the scars with, like I said, either neurotherapy or acupuncture, we've had reversal of symptoms completely. Okay, so remember that these alone could have a significant effect in your life, and find the people around you that can help you. But as far as myofascial, physical therapists are awesome, and even castor oil packs on scar tissue. If that's all you can do, go ahead and do some castor oil packs for 21 days in a row over scar tissue, and that is amazing how it will loosen that up, and it can reverse a lot of these long-term complications from it. So the most important thing to reverse anything is, as you know, and I know, I'm militant about this, is finding the primary cause and stopping it. If you don't stop the primary cause that is, causing the leaky gut, you're not going to get out of this crazy loophole that you're in, okay? So whether it's food sensitivities, or whether this is stress, or whatever it is, you need to find out what it is and nip it. And then we need to go into the treatment protocols. But we have to figure out what the root cause is for you. So what are the management? I think that it's super important to remove all types of dietary irritants, not only the IC ones, but go dairy-free. By the way, dairy-free just means cow's milk. Okay, dairy means cows. If you can tolerate it, some people with IC may not tolerate certain cheeses, you can now switch to either goat or sheep, and that may make a huge difference. If you go ahead and use your pressure cooker, you're going to break down a lot of the lectins, so you're not going to have to worry about that as a source of inflammation and as a source of leaky gut. You got to be sleeping. If you do not sleep, you're not going to be able to heal at night. And I know it's difficult, because if you're getting up every 15 minutes, sleep is not the easiest thing. So whatever it takes to improve that, including melatonin, and we'll do another webinar about sleep, but whatever it takes to control the frequency, urgency, but also avoiding other sources of the sleep issues that have nothing to do with your bladder. Meditation, prayer, yoga, fishing, whatever it takes for you to go into a parasympathetic tone, which means that's the tone where we actually heal from. If we're always being chased by the tiger and we're in a sympathetic overtone, you will create the worst leaky gut ever. Gentle exercise. Believe it or not, all of those people out there that are doing very heavy exercising, they're pushing themselves heavily. Guess what? That can be one of the sources of leaky gut and stress in your life. So go for gentle, go for nurturing, super important. There's some amazing Qigongs. I will one of these days teach you some of my favorite healing Qigongs that can really help you. Acupuncture, cranial massage, nature walks, anything that is going to help you reach that sense of inner peace is the only thing that can throw you away from the sympathetic tone and into the parasympathetic healing modes. What else can be done? No doubt that there's certain herbs that I adore, by the way. These herbs here, not only are they good for leaky gut, they're very excellent also for the bladder. These we call mucinous herbs. Even the names alone, they kind of make you feel already smooth. It's like marshmallow root, slippery elm, corn silk, aloe vera. All of those are very soothing and nurturing and healing. They coat the lining of the bladder. They protect you against toxins and irritants. So play with them, because they can, like I said, they can help both the intestinal tract and also the bladder lining. L-glutamine is actually been probably the best studied of all the different supplements as far as healing the lining of the gut and the leaky gut. So glutamine is super important. Of course, probiotics and prebiotics. If you take probiotics alone, it's not going to work as well as if you feed the food that they like to eat with it. It's almost like sending the kids to school with a backpack full of food. The more probiotics, the more millions, the better. Billions, I would say, even better. And the diversity, the more diversity of the different little healthy microorganisms, the better. Melatonin, super important in that it will also help you sleep, but it has it's very good for the immune system. Here, low dose naltrexone would be very helpful. Quercetin, and the other things that are super important, and I cannot emphasize bone broth enough. It is probably on itself, if I had to say the two things that you should do if you could only pick two, and I would say bone broth would be number one. People used to make these on a regular basis. I know we used to do it in my house when I was a kid, and I still do it actually. Once a week on the weekend, I get this huge broth pot, and I go and buy organic bones that have marrow in them, and all kinds of different bones, by the way, from free-range animals, animals that were grass-fed. And I will use a lot of different bones, and then I use a lot of different root vegetables, and I personally put a lot of seaweed because seaweed is totally loaded with minerals. And if people don't like the flavor of seaweed, the one that is very helpful because it melts away and your family won't even notice it is called dulce, and it's kind of that reddish seaweed that will just melt into your broth and you'll never even taste it, but you will definitely benefit from the amazing minerals that are in it. But I tell you one thing, for all the poor cancer patients that I have dealt with for the last 30 years, you know that I'm also an oncologist, urological oncologist. There's nothing that has brought him back from leaky gut like bone broth. And if bone broth can bring you back from a leaky gut secondary to chemotherapy, it can bring you back from almost any leaky gut. So make once a week one big pot, and then you have to drink it. I would say drink, like a couple cups a day, morning and evening, or whatever works for you. But drink it every day, and it's going to be, you're going to notice a significant change. Then the other thing that I really have seen miracles with is intermittent fasting. I think the best way to fast is to try to get all your food within 6 hours. So if you're going to do 2 meals a day, do them within 6 hours of each other. And the other 18 hours, do nothing. Drink water, but do no food. So that way your poor intestinal system can just heal. It doesn't have to be irritated, and you don't have to worry about what you're eating. Is it causing more inflammation? Is it not? And then slowly that inflammation in the intestines goes down, the tight junctions come back together, and it's gonna be amazing. So the combination of bone broth, the 18-hour fasting, and then the L-glutamine with the fermented fruits can be significant. And also those herbs that I was telling you about will also help you heal the bladder lining. So why are we talking about this? Is because in my opinion, lack of serotonin is so significant. And then on top of that, having that inflammation in your poor intestinal tract, and then having your poor immune system not knowing whether it's coming or going. And then on top of that, all the poor liver, which by the way, in Chinese medicine, liver has to do with 3 things that are important: frustration, anger. Okay, so a lot of people are going to have a constant sense of frustration and anger. But guess what rules the urethra? So a lot of the people that are having urethral syndrome or symptoms in the urethra associated with their interstitial cystitis, liver stagnation, liver toxicity, liver being in overdrive from all the toxins getting through the intestinal tract are going to affect your liver, and that's going to predispose you to having more urethral syndromes like burning and frequency and urgency. So these, you see how it all ties in? It's one and the same. So the people that say there's no connection whatsoever, don't even listen to them. Now you know better, and now you have some tools here that can help you make a difference. Okay, so get out of this deep recession, which is what I call depression, and get your serotonin levels up, not by taking junk like, medication, but yeah, you could do tryptophan, you could do things that can promote naturally the levels of serotonin, but unless you heal your gut, all you're doing is, putting a band-aid. Serotonin will start working perfectly once the gut heals up. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you find this helpful, and I'm looking forward to some comments and questions. Don't let me out of these too easily. I'd love to address questions, so just kind of go to our Facebook group and be happy to answer things that you may be wondering about. Talk to you soon. We'll do another Mythbuster next week. If you have ideas, let me know. Otherwise, I'll just keep bringing up things that I think are being misunderstood by everybody except us. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.